Hello, everyone. Welcome back to GRID Encore. I'm Ben Schneider, alongside Brandon Crossland and Josh Birch. Brandon, Josh, how are each of you doing tonight?
Doing well, and Josh, it's good to be on an episode with you in 2023. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I had COVID for the last couple and not been great. I know you missed one that I was on. So, Yeah, it's nice to be back into some normality. And even though I'm not 100% fully fit yet, I'm well enough to be back on the main shows and keep going. And the only thing that's affecting me at the moment is loss of a bit of voice after yesterday and the weekend as well. Oh, and lack of sleep. But then again, what's new for me?
That's the normal.
Yeah, that's normal.
Crazy schedule, especially with the racing in Australia this weekend. And of course, basketball season winding down. We've got the national championship to look forward to later tonight. But Brandon, I know the work that you do on basketball season is already wrapped up. So hopefully we should be able to keep the gang together on a more regular basis as we get into the heart of the season here. And we'll get into the show tonight now. But before we do, of course, we want to give a special shout out to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, and David. Your support means the world to us. You too can invest in the GRID Network through Patreon, or you can do a one-time donation at Buy Me a Coffee. And of course, follow us on all of our social media platforms and subscribe to us here on YouTube. We're trying to hit our big goal of 1,000 subscribers before the Indianapolis 500, which is hard to believe, less than 2 months away. It's coming up quick on us. So help us get to that goal. Brandon, we're going to talk to you a little bit later in regards to the NASCAR stuff, so we'll see you then. But Josh, we got a lot to look at with regards to the weekend in Australia. A crazy weekend in Melbourne, all up and down the F1 to F3 ladder. The F3 sprint race in particular, seeing the initial winner disqualified. And I do apologize in advance. At the time we went to build our graphics, the disqualification hadn't been announced yet. So move Zach O'Sullivan up a place on those results there. But that just scratches the surface, I feel like, of the chaos that we saw in Australia. Also plenty of chaos in the F2 races that saw Dennis Hauger and Yuma Iwasa take the sprint and feature wins respectively. So Josh, just take us through what stood out the most to you from this past weekend down under.
Well, whoever decided to take F3 and F2 all the way to Australia was both the most hated man from a broadcaster's point of view and the most loved man or woman in the paddock. I say man because it's a male member who directs the team and who runs the calendar in F3. It used to be a wonderful female who's moved on to the Formula One team as well and works now on the FIA panel for women. So just before I get anything there, I wanted to correct myself. As well. But my goodness me, Formula 3 and Formula 2 were absolutely fantastic in Australia. I was questioning it as well. And even during the practice session, I was like, this looks weird. It doesn't feel quite right. But it just kicked into another gear. By the time Friday afternoon came around and the rain started to hit, we had a wet F2 quali, which was epic. Formula 3 qualifying was fantastic. Excuse me. It's the same. My throat's going. But the racing across Formula 3 and Formula 2 this weekend was next level. It was high drama in both the feature and the sprint race. And we'll start with the Formula 3 sprint race as well, where you mentioned Franco Colapinto was the race winner. And then all three of the MP Motorsport cars, cars 10, 11 and 12, that's Marie Boyer, who was already excluded, Johnny Edgar, and Franco Colapinto, they were all excluded for technical non-conformity of the rules and regulations as well. So they got kicked out. That promoted Zach O'Sullivan into the race victory. But the man I feel most sorry for is Sebastian Montoya, who, after 4 safety cars in the sprint race, was leading the race, made a small mistake and lost out. Dropped back to third, so a podium, but now gets second position. And that put Paul Aron up into third. A great race from him in the Prima, side by side several times with Gabriel Mini Montoya and Dino Beganovic as well. Gabriele Bortolano, the championship leader, had a reverse grid, of course, so he started further down, was on pole for the next race as well. We'll get on to that later. But yeah, he did well to hold on to 6th position after starting back in 12th. Fornaroli, Saucy, Mansell and Frederick round out the top 10. Points goes to 8. So Saucy was the last person to get a point. It was Fornaroli, but then they changed the rules. Looking down as well, Sophia Flörsch did really well. 16th place for her as well. I thought was massively impressive. And of course, we had a lot of non-retirements as well. First of all, there was a penalty for Luke Browning. He got a excuse me, he got a 10-second penalty for causing a collision. Garcia retired from the race as well, brought out a safety car. Tommy Smith hit the wall coming out the last corner, brought out a safety car. Ida Cohen stopped as well on lap 5, again brought out a safety car. And then before the racing even started as well, Oliver Goleth had a problem and didn't start the race. It was just all nonsense. And that was at 1:30 in the morning UK time. It was insane. The next day, the Formula 3 feature race was absolutely fantastic. Gabriele Bortoletti started on pole position, championship leader, took the lead of the race and just ran with it. But because the race kept, again, being interrupted by safety cars, it was Saucy who was right up there with him, and they were battling it out left and right, overtakes no matter what. It was brilliant. Gabriel Mini third, and then Fornaroli got up to 4th position. But look further down, Jose Maria Marti, 7th in the feature race. Guess where they started that race? Jose Maria Marti started 30th, last on the grid, and got up into 7th position. An amazing performance of him. And many people in the paddock have turned around and go, he'll be in Formula 1 soon. It was that type of performance. He crashed in qualifying in the mixed conditions as well. He came in the weekend as the championship leader, and he's proved that he can still compete in the championship by flying up there to the top as well. Instance in that race, Ida Cohen was out, Roberto Ferrer, Wisnicki went out, Frederick Colapinto, he went out in the MP, so did Maria Boya, they all went out. Montoya on the opening lap of the race made contact with Boya straight down the escape road, and out went Montoya as well. Saucy got the fastest lap bonus point as well for second, so that helped him close up on the championship. But there was a couple of penalties as well. Car 9 as well getting a penalty as well. That was too slow, 10-second penalty for forcing another driver off the track. Rafael Villa-Gomez causing a collision, so 10-second penalty. 5-second penalty as well applied to the 16, whose name escapes me this time because they're not on my sheet here. So they've been disqualified from the session. I'm looking through and I can't see as well. And car 2 as well, getting a 10-second penalty for causing a collision, that of Dino Beganovic as well. I'm just taking a look. I think they mean car 18 on the board because I'm not seeing any other car 16 coming through with the penalties. Luke Browning again with another penalty. I've just seen on the list. Formula 2 now as well was absolute insanity. They were all no hold bar racing. The sprint race, exactly the same as what we saw in Saudi Arabia. Close pack racing, continuous running as well. Dennis Hauger finished that race on top as well with Jack Crawford and Kush Maney. But because of safety cars again interrupting, Hauger won by 1.1 second to Crawford, and they won the last lap, all three of them together, because joining that battle was Crawford, Maney, Artely Clare, Zay Maloney, Hadjar as well. 6 cars on the last lap of the sprint, all fighting out for the win. And 4 DRS zones really played a factor as to why this race was great as well. Brad Benedires was out. Jack Doohan retired as well on lap 13. Boschong and Fittipaldi crashed out. They didn't even start the race in the Campos on the Road in Garland as well with the DNS. Hauger got the points as well. And Juan Manuel Correa did finish inside the points, but got a 10-second time penalty as well for causing a collision. But the sprint race was fantastic. But if we thought that was something, the feature is a different kettle of fish as well. Sunday morning, and all hell broke loose because there was several overtakes, several safety cars, and it lasted a whole hour. Now, what happened was one of the most frightening accidents we've seen in a very long time. We had Roy Lozani retire, and he was stuck on the side of the track. Enzo Fittipaldi came out the pit lane, this was towards the end of the race, on new set of soft compound tyres, lit up the rear tyres, hit the wall, and then continued going. But then the rear suspension failed, and he came within millimetres of hitting the stationary car of Roy Lozani in another high-speed accident. It was very bad. We thought they were going to have to stop the race. Remarkably, they managed to get us a 2-lap sprint. So a bit like what we had with Formula 1, which we're getting to soon, we had a 2-lap sprint to the end, and it ended with Awassa winning and taking the championship lead, with Portier second and Artely Clear in third position as well. A stunning race all drama and penalties galore. Boschong, who remember was brilliant in Bahrain, has got a 5-second time penalty for an unsafe release in the pit lane as well during the first of the safety cars that day, causing a collision for car 6 of Victor Martins. He got a penalty, again a championship contender. Oliver Behrman as well got a penalty, 5 seconds for forcing another driver of the track. Basically, if you were a championship contender coming into this weekend Formula 2, you're not anymore. And it's just rejigged the entire field once again. Stunning racing, stunning action. And whoever's idea it was to bring the juniors to Melbourne deserves a massive round of applause and a promotion up, because it was spectacular racing. And I honestly think it was worth the long nights that we had to suffer. And I want to send a special shout out, actually, Ben, as well, to my commentary team as well, who helped me as well throughout the night shift as well on JB Motorsports, because doing night shifts is not fun, and they were incredibly professional, incredibly up there and awake and alert, and I couldn't have done the weekend without them. So well done to everybody who helped me on the broadcast. They were magical. Oh, I can't hear Ben. I don't know if my earpiece has
No,
gone.
I was muted. Oh, that's on me. I muted myself. I always do that. I've always forget to unmute myself. But I'll tell you, I thought it was a long night here for us in the United States. But with all the junior categories, the F3, the F2 stuff, I mean, that was all basically taking place overnight for you guys over in the UK, and certainly have to give you guys props for pulling through and getting those broadcasts put together. I do want to follow up with one thing. I know Roy Nissany has constantly been picked on a little bit and criticized at times throughout his Formula 2 career. I know that there was, like you mentioned, that incident again this weekend. Where do you think he is in terms of good standing with the Formula 2 paddock at this point?
Well, in this instance, he did the same thing as Magnussen. He touched the wall coming out the corner and did a 360. But in general sense, many people are saying he's 29 years old. He's not going to get to Formula 1. He's a paid driver in Formula 2. And many people are saying, like, why is he there? He got race bans. He's nearly killed himself along with other drivers last year at Silverstone as well, with forcing, I think, Haug off the track. Haug got taken up in the air. And if it wasn't for the halo, he would have killed himself effectively. It would have been a weird inquiry, we mentioned as well in the commentary, I think, last year at Silverstone. The fact is that if he had forced the driver off the track, it would be dangerous driving, but it would result in his death. It was very weird. And he got a severe sanction for that from the stewards and the FIA. And I think everybody's thinking the same as, like, why is he here? And why is he racing? We thought like Gunnathan was bad. Roy Nissany is a million times more deadly on a circuit because he's capable of winning races. He's a very quick driver, but he's a dangerous driver. And that's what worries a lot of people. But cash is king, even in the junior series, and he's paying to be there. And we can't seem to get rid of him. But I think in many instances, on a good day, Roy Nissany is brilliant. I mean, he did do some stellar moves in the weekend. He went around the outside of one of the corners that you don't overtake at, and he managed to pull it off. But that's a good day. On a bad day with Roy Nissany, you worry about being on track with him. So I'm surprised he's still in the series, to be fair. And especially how old he is in the junior category. He's 29. He's too old, way too old, to be making a debut in Formula 1.
Yeah, what is this? I think his 6th season or something like that in Formula 2. So it has been a while. So we'll see if anything comes of it. I know he's gotten behind a Williams F1 car in a few FP1s over the last couple of years, but I think it is probably a little bit late if you want to talk about him being a potential future F1 driver. I think that ship's probably sailed at this point. And then at that point, I guess you have to wonder, what is he doing in Formula 2?
It really annoys me that if you look at paid drivers and all the ones we've had in the past, they're all Williams drivers as well. Well, maybe not Nikita Mazepin. He was a different kettle of fish, but they all seem to be coming from Williams. Latifi, Sorokin, even Stroll started at Williams. So they're all sort of slowly cropping up there. They've got a good talent there at the moment. They've got Albon and Sargent, 2 very great drivers. So I think Williams is sort of moving away from that paid driver thing, and they have got talent at the moment, which is good to see.
Yeah, well, let's shift gears now, I guess, to the Formula 1 race. I know we don't talk about F1 as much on this show, but obviously, Josh, it was a very busy weekend for you, so understandably, yes, it was too late for you to make the wrap-up show yesterday. I think it's kind of the elephant in the room right now. I think we have to take advantage of this time to at least give you a moment to give your full thoughts. I know you gave us a statement for the wrap-up show yesterday, but it's been almost 48 hours now. I'm still trying to wrap my head around what we saw Saturday night into Sunday morning, depending on where you are in the world. Sunday afternoon, I guess, in Australia. What happened at the end of that F1 race, and were the rules and regulations followed? I know Haas said they were going to protest and thought Hülkenberg should have been higher up the finishing order. What's your take on everything that happened?
Well, to quote Matt White, who said about Will Buxton, who started the post-race show on F1, the rules were followed. Annoyingly, he's correct. The rules were actually followed. And as a YouTuber who said Rocket Powered Mohawk, who's a fantastically funny guy, I honestly suggest you check him out. Many people, and I think Tommy as well from Matt P1 and Tommy got it as well. It's quite funny that on the weekend that Michael Masi was in the F1 paddock for the first time since Abu Dhabi 2021, we had an instance where the red flag came out on lap 58 of 58, and they ended up voiding lap 58. So it actually finally happened, which I found hilarious. To explain fully what happened, the race is required by regulation, if it's able to, and with it being a dry race, it was, you have to make every effort to restart a Grand Prix under a standing start, to have a 5-light procedure, because the race has been stopped. It needs to be restarted. Charlie Whiting actually brought this rule in for the 2019 season, just shortly before he died, because everybody was requesting, let's have standing starts again after restart. So he brought it in. It's not something that Masi or the FIA brought in. Charlie Whiting himself decided, okay, we'll go back to using standing starts. It's more entertaining for the fans. They get another start, and it's also a good shake-up for the race to get it restarted, because we wanted a red flag for a long time as well. So standing starts is the rule. Everything that happened yesterday was correct. The FIA can't be blamed for the drivers wanting to play pinball wizard through turn 1 and turn 2. That was akin to cold tyres and cold brakes and clutches being overworn because it was the third start of the day. We've never had that many starts. I think that was the 4th start of the day, actually, after 3 red flags. So it was a long start. We ended up having 4 red flags yesterday, because there was one after the checkered flag. Hülkenberg stopped on the track and fans had gone onto the circuit. So because the Australian marshals had let them onto the circuit for the traditional post-race fun, because the track was still damaged and Hülkenberg was on the track, they had to throw the red flag just to say, get the marshals, get them behind the barrier. So we actually had 4 red flags yesterday, not 3, which makes it, again, the most red flags in F1 history in a single race. So to talk about what happened on lap 57, everything was followed correctly. They had to stop the race. And when they stopped the race, not all the drivers had passed the first sector line. Now, we saw this back at Silverstone last season with Zhou Guanyu's crash. The red flag came out before all the drivers had crossed the first sector time. So it's a rule that actually Formula E created, because they had an incident in Bern in Switzerland a couple of years ago, when they all crashed at the first corner and they hadn't got to the finish line yet, which was the first line. So they had to go on the original starting grid. And it's the same thing. Even though we were 57 laps into the race, because it was a restart, it was a lap 1 type situation. So we hadn't got a running order officially from the restart. So we had to go back to the last complete lap, which was Alonso in 3rd, before Sainz had hit him. So Alonso got it back up. Haas's protest was correct, because Sainz got a penalty, so Hülkenberg and them could have got a podium. But by the letter of the law, because not everybody had crossed that first sector line that was able to do so when the red flag was called, the race had to go back to the last complete lap, which showed Alonso in 3rd. Many people were then saying, well, why did we have to restart the race on the last lap? Why couldn't they just call it there? Well, the reason for that is because if we'd red flagged on lap 58 out of 58, which we did, and then said, that's it, we're not restarting the race, it creates a problem with the computer, because the computers can only go back 1 lap, which would take us to the end of 57 when all the accidents happened. So we have to go back to lap 56 which then shows us the problem with where the red flag was, because that was the lap that got stopped at. So, and it was technically lap 56 was a formation lap, so it's not the last complete. So you've got to go back to lap 55, which is when the red flag came out. Then you go back to lap 54, which was when the results was completely different anyway. So that's not allowed. You can't go 5 laps back to get a result. You can only go maximum 2, the last complete lap. So, and the race was able to restart. We had a lap. And the FIA was correct with the decision. It's in the rule book as well. The safety car leads them up the pit lane. They come up. The safety car enters the pit lane at the end of the lap. It's a rolling start procedure. But because there's no overtaking to the start-finish line, what should have happened, and it didn't actually, because only the checker flag was there, a yellow flag and a checker flag are supposed to be waved together to signal the end of the race, and they all cross the line in single file. It didn't happen because Hamilton tried to get past because he thought he might be able to just get the line. And a few drivers thought that. And the checker flag was out. So it was right to get that because you have to cross the line to finish the race now. They make every effort to make that race finished. They chose now, another thing is also because it was the last lap, they chose the rolling start. But technically what should have happened is they should have lined up on the grid, 5 lights, and then first across the line, you get the win. It's literally like 58 laps, but 20 meters to get to the line. But they chose the rolling start option because it was a unique circumstance. We've never had a red flag on the last ever lap of the race before and having to restart. So it's not a case of NASCAR overtime. It's a similar situation, but they set the precedent back in Baku 2021 that last 5 laps, we red flag. They didn't follow it in Abu Dhabi 21. Look what kicked off. They didn't do it in Italy last year, and look what kicked off. So you are damned if you do, and you are damned if you don't, in view of the fans. And the FIA put this rule in place to stop everybody moaning. If we red flag in the last 5 laps, we do a standing restart. If there's an accident in the last 5 laps, we red flag. It's simple as. And I like that because it's to stop the moaning and to protect the drivers and the FIA. And it was the right thing to do because the amount of carnage we had as well, if anything, the only red flag that was worth it was the last one, because I don't see why Albon's crash was a red flag. That could have been handled under safety car. And I don't see why Magnussen's was a red flag either, because that was handled under safety car in Formula 2 and it could have been handled under a safety car in F1. So they were light red flags, in my opinion. And the letter of the law was followed. But as I said yesterday in the statement, every time you stop the race, you have to fill in a report, the FIA race director, and send it in to the World Motorsport Council for review, just to make sure that you're not stopping it for, like a leaf or something. You've got to be stopping it for a reason. And they will be made public end of the month. So we'll get to see what Niles Wittig, the race director, has to say on the matter. And my final point in the F1 is about Michael Masi being back in the paddock. There is a rumour going around that the FIA want him back, not in the race director's chair, but back in a capacity to help Niles Wittig out, because he is already feeling the stress of having to do as many races, because Eduardo Freitas was fired from the role after putting the recovery choke on the track in Japan last year. I think also that's why the red flag came out yesterday, was because we had to put recovery things on the track. So the FIA is both becoming too safe and becoming a bit too silly with things, and it's all getting a bit over the top. And I think the rules need a complete rejig as well. So it's a complete mess, to be fair. And it was a very long day. And even now, you can't get your head around it. And we're planning a podcast, actually, with some of the commentators for the week. Well, the weekend review we have to film. And basically, I wanted to try and turn it into a massive argument, because some people said that was a fantastic way to end the race. Some people are saying that's ridiculous. So I really want to get that sorted. And then I think we need another round table discussion like we did on Great White Checkers, as you say, Ben. So there's a lot to unpack about it. And I haven't been able to call my usual people today post-race. I've been out and they're all still in Australia and at different times. So we're on a month break now with F1. So I'll catch up with everyone and I'll be fully briefed getting into Baku at the end of April and finding out exactly what is happening. And I think we're going to see a couple of few changes. And don't forget also, another big thing that could come is the fact that the F1 teams are asking the FIA, and the FIA want to do it, is the fact that we're going to have another weekend format change in Baku, possibly coming, in where on Friday we have the FP1 and the qualifying session for the Grand Prix, and then on Saturday it becomes the sprint only day. So we have a qualifying again Saturday morning to set the grid for the sprint, and then we have the sprint race on Saturday afternoon, and it doesn't set the grid for the F1. So main race on Sunday, the Grand Prix. So that's coming up, and that might get introduced by Baku. So there's a lot actually going on in Formula One right now. It's been a very, very busy weekend for the Australian Grand Prix.
That sounds so silly to me. If they're going to tweak the sprint format again and to have it 6 rounds this year, man, that's not going to go over too well with some of the fan base, I don't think. But of course, I've always said, in my mind, the red flag should be something that is reserved for safety reasons. Of course, you want to think back to Australia, Fernando Alonso's crash with Esteban Gutierrez in 2016. Of course, a situation like that.
That's a red flag, yeah.
A red flag. In this particular case, Kevin Magnussen's in particular, if that happens, I think I made this point a couple of weeks ago. If that happens on lap 7, is that a red flag?
Well, it did. Albon. Yeah. We saw it. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah. That is true. So, but again, I think even Albon's to a certain extent was, I don't even know if Magnussen's was as severe or had as much cleanup as that, because at least Albon, you could argue he went into gravel and track needed to be swept and all that. So I don't know. I just think that that there's we talk about in NASCAR all the time being consistently inconsistent. I think that there was certainly a lot of confusion as to how this race finished out, and if the rules were followed according to the book, then they probably just need to be rewritten anyway, because I think a situation like this was very confusing for the fans, and it got drawn out far too long for fans as well.
We were sat up in the commentary box and we couldn't work it out, what was happening next and why this was happening. I mean, Tom Dillon, I was commentating with on the race, he said it was a bit of a soft call to throw the red flags on all of them as well. It was a bit of a mess. And I've seen people ask me and people say, well, that's the last time we're going to have a standing start restart, isn't it, in Formula One? And I said, I immediately replied to them, oh, so we're never going to have another start in Formula One then? Because that could have happened on lap 1. That's the thing. But I hope they don't change that rule, because that crash could happen at the start of any race and has done. Just because it happened on a restart doesn't mean it's a restart fault. It happened because everybody was a bit too excited. And the same could have happened on lap 1 and has done in the past. So the red flag restart procedure is fine. We don't need to change it. It works. Having a standing start was done up until 2001. Then they changed the rule to have a safety car do it instead, because the safety car became the logical choice to do it. And then everybody complained about that, so we changed it back. And I like the fact that we get another start. I think it's exciting. The starts are the best part. We all know it. It's all high drama. And it's also the logical way. The race has been physically stopped. We may as well just line up on the grid, have the 5 lights and go again. It's a restart. It feels right. We have it in IndyCar, in NASCAR. They go 2 by 2 again and we restart the race. And they do it at cautions as well. They're the best bit. So why don't F1 have it? Everyone gets bored, because if we have a safety car restart, it's all just normal, and it's like an anticlimax for a restart. You get more tired after having a red flag. This way, everyone's bubbling up and thinking, what's going to happen this time? And it works, because I was stood in the commentary box at the last start with 2 to go, and I hadn't slept all weekend, and I was stood there and I was shaking and I was buzzing. I was like, I'm really excited about this. And that's what makes it fun, and that's proper F1, because everybody says to me as well, it's artificial. They've done this to artificial. And then I would do remind them, as I said earlier, it was standard practice in F1 for when the red flag came out. We had standing restarts. That was the way we did it up until 2001. So if anything, it's returning to the historic roots of restarting races. So I can't get it. Some fans say, oh, they're changing the history, they're changing the format. Well, we've gone back to something that was old and you're still complaining. So what do you want, racing fans? What do you want? And as I said, we had Mexican waves going around, and I said in the commentary, Australia, are you not entertained? And that's the thing. I think everybody was. Everybody complains, like the journalists, we complain like, oh, it's so confusing. This isn't right. Why have they done this? It was a confusing way to end the race. But if you step back and look at a fan point of view, it was high drama. It was fantastic after a boring race because we had the first 9 laps with 2 safety cars and an exciting battle forming between Red Bull and the two Mercedes with Verstappen, Hamilton and Russell. Then the red flag came out and then Hamilton led but then got passed by Verstappen, and by 2 corners later he was 2 seconds ahead, which I still think is a bit weird. And then for the rest of the race it was boring, and then last 5 laps hell broke loose. So it's not a classic race, but it was a unique race, and I think that's what we need to remember. Formula One can be unique at times.
I think it's about finding that balance as well. Maybe there needs to be a middle point between a train or a procession like what we see at Monaco every year versus the absolute chaos and confusion of this race, sort of a last lap at Abu Dhabi in 2021. God forbid we bring that back up again. I know David Croft and Ted Kravis, I think we're going back and forth on that.
Yes, they are.
Watching the race broadcast back, but yeah, certainly I'm sure there's going to be a lot to be discussed over the next few weeks. Of course, we got several weeks until the next F1 race in Baku, so plenty of time to discuss it further. Whether or not the FIA will actually sort anything out, who knows? But we'll see what happens from there. Josh, let you go into our Moto3 and Moto2 recaps here, and then we'll proceed from there. But what stood out to you from those race weekends? I know you were saying backstage that you thought we saw some of the best racing all weekend in those series.
Yeah, we really did as well, because rain hit the circuit in Argentina and it was a wet Sunday throughout all 3 classes. And we saw some really strong rides from a lot of the riders. Starting off then with Moto3, Tezuka Suzuki, which is a very hard name to say, absolutely dominated. In Formula 3, see, I've done it again. In Moto3, it is extremely hard to break away from the field because they're all so similar riders, they're all so similar engines and bikes. It's incredibly hard to break away and win the race by seconds. He was leading by 5 seconds. That is unheard of. In a wet race, it's even more unheard of. Suzuki dominated and utterly blew everybody away. Behind him, it was a massive battle. I'm literally going to read you out all these times as well. From the position of Monrella all the way down to Asman in 11th position. That was the battle for second. So it was unbelievable. Monrella, Minio, Holgado, Ogden, Nepa, Toba, Arteaga, Yakanama, Salvador, and Asman all together battling as well. Towards the end of the race, though, they split apart a bit and we became like a 5-way scrap for second position. Diego Monrella held it. Minio was second. Holgado was leading the race and starting on pole position, dropped back very quickly. Scott Ogden started on the back of the 7th row, which is 3 wide in Moto3, so it's quite far back at the end of the field. Finished up there in 5th position. And Vision Track Racing, which is run by Michael Laverty, who's a pundit on BT Sport, absolutely fantastic for them to get points as well, especially as Joshua Whiteley had a really bad race as well and finished down in 15th position. Did get 1 point, but it could have been more throughout the weekend. He got really hit by mixed conditions throughout the weekend. So really well done from Suzuki to dominate as well. A few retirements though. Sasaki crashed out. He was in 2nd position for most of the race as well, and then dropped at the last. He had a high side coming into turn 4, the hairpin. Agi and Messia, they both crashed out as well, and Riccardo Rossi out of the race too. And we had a few nasty ones as well in Moto3, Moto2 this weekend as well. Same as in MotoGP with riders being out. The weekend formats and so close together, we've been back to back. It's really quite difficult. Moto2, due to the weather conditions as well, and the fact that we were on a tight schedule with MotoGP starting at a specific time, they actually reduced the race distance for Moto2, which was supposed to be 21 laps, but because we were doing 2-minute lap times, we actually had to reduce it to 14 laps in total. And that was a three-way scrap throughout the race between Tony Alberino, Alonso Lopez, and Jake Dixon from Great Britain. Personal moment here. Well done, Jake Dixon, getting on the podium. He's a good rider, and we don't have many Brits on the grid, so that was quite a nice moment. Alberino was quite fun as well. Him, Lopez, and Dixon were following each other and making battles and going for it as well on the inside. Alberino surprised everybody by getting the race win. Aaron Canet was a good surprise up there in fourth position after a bad weekend in Portugal. Garcia could have done more, but dropped back. Of course, he was in Moto3 last year, progressed up to Moto2 as the champion. Darren Binder down from MotoGP as well, did well to get into sixth position as well, but he's good at this class. Looking further down as well, Sam Lowes rounded out top 10, and looking with him as well, we did have another Brit rider in position as well, but he crashed out of the race. Sam in 10th position. Pedro Acosta, winner last weekend and was the championship leader, down in 12th position. So that's changed over now. Tony Alberino leads the Moto2 Championship. Rory Skinner was up there in 10th position. He retired. The Brit, David Sanchez and Sean Dillon Kelly all retired in the wet conditions as well. There wasn't much going on further back in the field as well. It was very much a three-way fight in the field, but it was such an engaging three-way fight that I found it really fascinating. And I think we've been treated to an absolutely spectacular weekend of racing as well, and well worth it if you did, like me, the whole thing, because my sleep schedule as well, guys, it literally went from, on Thursday night, I went to bed at 9 p.m. I woke up at 11:30 p.m. I did Formula 3, Formula 2, Formula 1 again, and then I went to bed at 8:30 a.m. and I woke up at 1 p.m. and then I went 2 p.m. I was in the garage in the commentary box as well for MotoGP, and then I went to bed at 8 p.m. 9 p.m. Forgot about that. Got 2 hours sleep for Friday night to Saturday morning. Then did everything again with F3, F2, and F1. Then got 2 hours sleep before being back in the commentary box. So I think I was only on 2 or 3 hours sleep throughout the entire weekend, and did 26 hours yesterday in a row with everything because I couldn't sleep because the red flag for F1 went on for so long. I missed the sleep time. So I had to get everything prepped for MotoGP and IndyCar. So I missed the sleep time and decided to go all out. So glad I did it. It was a great race, but I'm still feeling the effects now. I feel like I've been on Australian time. It's such a weird combo to change it, but that's what we do when we love racing, and it's been a great weekend to award us.
Well, speaking of loving racing and rewarding us, Josh, before we let you go, I want to give you an opportunity to share your one shining moment, and I'll open it up to the whole race weekend for you, of course, since you weren't on the wrap-up show yesterday. What stood out to you the most?
My one shining moment, I think I am going to give to Formula One, but not where you're thinking. I'm going to give it to McLaren, because after the worst start to a season in their entire championship, no points after the opening two races, they were slowly progressing through the field. They found something this weekend with their mojo, and to see Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri get points, their first points of the season, and Oscar to get his first points in Formula One at Melbourne was a lovely sight to see. So I think McLaren 100% get my one shining moment this weekend.
It's good to hear. Well, Josh, thank you so much again for joining us. Good to have you back on the Encore show. And best of luck covering the rest of the races this year. Of course, we get a little bit of an off weekend here. It's going to be Easter weekend, so not too much going on. NASCAR's on the door to Bristol, so we'll see what we do. I know in the past we've done like a combo show wrap up and Encore since there's not as much going on, but we'll see how our schedules play out here. I know it's a holiday for a lot of us, so we'll keep everybody updated from there. But until we meet again, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Brandon, and thank you to everyone watching. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Glad to be back. And now I'm going to bed, and probably because I don't have to be up tomorrow, I'm going to have a nice lie in and try and catch up on some well-needed sleep, because I was rudely awoken this morning by my friend texting me as well, so I had to go out as well. And it's been a lovely day, actually. It's been a really, really lovely day. So nice and relaxed, as we're now on a week holiday, but not technically a week holiday because everyone's got work. So we'll just relax. Anyway, thanks, guys. Have a great rest of the show, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Josh. All right. Well, real quick, we're going to go into a quick recap of the ARCA Menards Series West and their race at Irwindale. I want to say congratulations to Sean Higurani picking up his first ARCA West win in a Venturini Motorsports car in a battle with Landon Lewis. It's his first career win, and it's only his third race with VMS. I believe only his sixth career start. I know he did the race out in Portland last year. Our own Joe Samniego got the chance to catch up with him after the race there, so good to see him in a good spot right now with Venturini and picking up the win here. And also something hard to believe, it's Venturini's first win in the ARCA Menards Series West. Of course, they're based primarily in the main ARCA Series. The West Series has only been under the ARCA banner for the last few years now. So great to see Venturini having some success out west as well. Of course, Lewis ended up finishing second ahead of Tyler Reif in third, Tanner Reif in fifth. Reif sandwiched with Huddleston being the meat in the middle there. Trevor Huddleston, of course, the pole sitter and hometown hero, coming home in fourth place. And as you can see the rest of his results there in a 16-car field at Irwindale. Lots to look forward to, I think, in the West Series later on this year. And, of course, we'll keep you all updated on that as the season carries on right here on GRID Encore. In the meantime, though, we'll bring Brandon Crossland back in here. Brandon, good to see you. I know you mentioned, I don't know if you just want to give your thoughts here quickly in 30 seconds to a minute here, but I know you caught the F1 race. I don't think live. I think you caught the race broadcast on tape delay.
Yeah, my baby. I'll watch it in the morning.
Yeah. Could you make sense of what we saw there? And it was absolute chaos.
It didn't make too much sense, but I was pleased to see that Alonso got to keep his podium. That's about it. It was a wild race, though. I really enjoyed all the battling up front he was talking about, and also the really nice finish there for McLaren after a dismal first two races. And overall, it was pretty great Formula One product. And I like to see the parity of sorts, and that not every race is a processional, as you were saying. And then we have some like these that we can enjoy. So yeah, it was really great.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess that's the running theme of the season, right? Fernando Alonso scoring a podium, and then questions as to whether or not he's going to be able to keep it, depending on how the race results pan out there. But
the saga will continue, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Got my Aston Martin green on again.
There you go. Yeah, maybe change the hat though. I'm not a huge fan of the hat you got on.
Oh, get out of here! Get out of here! They're playing right now.
Yeah, well, we started 0-3, so I can't really talk. Although we started last year horrible and ended up in the World Series, so still a long season. Got 159 games to go.
That's right.
All right, let's get into it now. The NASCAR Truck Series, Craftsman Truck Series at Texas Motor Speedway, many miles away from where most of the NASCAR action was going on this weekend at Richmond. Kind of a support series to IndyCar this weekend, but Carson Hocevar finally picking up his first Truck Series win. Of course, he's been so close so many times with Nice Motorsports. Brandon, how big of a weight is this off of Carson Hocevar's shoulders to finally get that win?
That's huge for Carson. Really great job there for Nice Motorsports to pick up the victory. And Carson Hocevar finally gets that win he's been itching for. You look back to last year, 7 top 5s, 12 top 10s. He got a pole out of last year. Just not lady luck as it goes. Just never really found its way to the 45 truck. Just incident after incident last year, and it kind of continued this year up to this point. So it's a big news there for Carson, and even if it comes from the NASCAR overtime finish, which we're not too pleased about around here all the time. I mean, a win is a win, and he even said at the end, this is not a win that he thinks he deserved. He didn't really like the way it happened there with Nick Sanchez, who swept the first two stages and took the pole. So I mean, you could see kind of the seared face there, and the kind of sort of a disappointment there in that fiery victory lane. But still, a win is a win. I'm sure he had that talk with Nick, and he's going to be smiling when he looks back at this weekend.
Well, that's a nice follow-up into this next question I've got here. Of course, there was a little bit of criticism on Twitter and on social media. Then again, when is there not when it comes to the finish of these races? Was there anything in your mind that Hocevar could have done to avoid turning Nick Sanchez, or do you think Sanchez was just so far out of shape and maybe had it saved, but Hocevar just had too much momentum at that point and there wasn't too much he could do?
I really don't think there was much he could do there. I think that's just the thrill of an overtime restart and that just barreling down into turn one. I mean, of course, Nick Sanchez had the faster equipment, but I probably would have to see it a couple more times, Ben. I don't really know if there's much he could have done there. What's your perspective on that? I'm curious to know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be clear, I've never driven a truck on a high banked oval this fast in iRacing, let alone in real life. I don't know, Brandon, maybe you have on iRacing.
Yeah, Texas sucks in iRacing, but
yeah.
I mean, no, Texas is a great track. iRacing is great. Texas is great.
Yeah.
All right. I'm trying to undo what I just said there. It doesn't mean
IndyCar it is for sure.
Yeah, IndyCar was great.
Yes, IndyCar was great. NASCAR, I don't know.
Listen, it's difficult to drive in iRacing. I can't imagine what it's like in the real truck. There, that's my statement.
Sure. Well, anyway, just speaking from this perspective, when I first saw it, I said, man, I hate that he won his first race that way, because I'd hate to, be that guy that, turns somebody for the win. After having watched the replay a couple of times, I think obviously not like a, Ty Gibbs at Martinsville situation last year. I think that this was a situation where I don't know that Hocevar went into the quarter intending to send him into the wall head on or anything like that. I think it's just a matter of Sanchez getting out of shape and Hocevar having too much momentum. And I mean, maybe you could make the argument he could have lifted, but if he lifts and loses all his momentum there, he probably finishes down in 10th place or something. And obviously at this point, the drivers are put into the box with the overtime finishes, like you were mentioning. I guess if there's anybody to blame in this situation, maybe you blame NASCAR for not just accepting that maybe it's okay to end races under caution, which this one did anyway, again. And, Nick Sanchez probably deserved to win the race. I think he led something but all like 4 laps or something like that. I mean, just an absolutely dominant race for him. And if he keeps driving like that, he's certainly going to get a couple wins of his own later this year. Dominant performance. A shame he couldn't end up in victory lane after that. But at the same time, I think can't fault Hocevar too much for that deal. I think it's a little bit different than, going into turn one intending to hook a guy or spin him around. I think this was just one of those deals for the drivers being put in a box. And I think that, that's kind of what we've come to expect from, the truck races in particular when it comes down to NASCAR overtime.
Yeah, look, Carson Hocevar is just playing the game of these trucks, and you had to keep your momentum moving in a restart like that, and getting on the back fender of the guy in front of you is just the way you do it. And come what may, after that, you're fighting for the win there. I think Carson is he's going to be able to look back at this and smile, but he had to have that tough talk, I'm sure, with Nick after that race, though, immediately.
We'll catch up on the chat here a little bit. Good to see Casey Campbell in the chat room. Hope you all are doing well. Casey, right back at you. Hope you're doing all right. And Adam Lemerise.
Yes, sir.
I don't really want to read this one out, but
go Braves.
You got a fellow Braves fan in the chat with you at least there, Brandon. So that's,
I know he is.
Good for you guys, I guess. Well, before I move on here, I just want to bring the results up again. Give a couple of shout outs as well. Chase Purdy, a great run for him. And second, Jake Garcia up there in the top 5. Haley Deegan just missing out on her first career top 5 finish as well. How about Ryan Vargas in 8th place? Kind of deja vu from his career best Xfinity run a couple of years ago in that TikTok car in the Xfinity Series, also finishing 8th here at this track. So some great runs for some young drivers continuing to try to move up the ladder, and some career bests in there as well. So we'll take you through the second page of the results again, just so that you can see all that. In the meantime, one name that you probably should have seen on the first page that unfortunately got taken out was Dean Thompson, and certainly we wish our best to him. I know he was giving an update on Twitter saying that I think generally speaking he's going to be all right, but it was a very scary situation, and of course we have a scary accident in that overtime finish as well that I think kind of left a sour taste in a lot of fans' mouths, which has been a common theme every time NASCAR's visited Texas Motor Speedway over the last couple of years. So, Brandon, I just want to pose this question to you here. Obviously, Texas put on a show with IndyCar this weekend, people calling it the race of the year candidate already, even though it's only April. So where does that leave the Speedway's relationship with NASCAR following what was certainly a much more frustrating and arguably more dangerous Truck Series race?
Yeah, it was really dangerous for sure for the Truck Series, and that I'm really glad that Dean Thompson walked out of that all right. But that was really scary there on the front stretch. But Ben, I can't I can't help but think it just as easily could have been a really dangerous weekend for IndyCar. Each time they come there, there are several close calls, and you saw Graham Rahal get the little ramp there from I think it was Devlin DiFrancesco, I believe. It's escaping me now, but I'm sure Casey could help me in the chat. But it could have easily been a dangerous weekend for IndyCar. So I think NASCAR is not too phased after a weekend like that, as scary as it is for us watching at home. I think they'll still go back, and Cup Series will be back as long as that deal with Texas is there.
Yeah, I don't think Texas has to worry about following up the schedule entirely anytime soon. But so certainly safe to say that it's a very polarizing track still on the NASCAR side of things. I think it might have redeemed itself for IndyCar this weekend. It's just a shame that there weren't more fans in attendance to watch it. I know the weather forecast wasn't great, but I think IndyCar certainly needs to step up the marketing aspect, because fans that could have come out but didn't certainly missed one heck of a show there. But, again, I know we were just talking, I think, last week, drivers that have surprised us, and at the same time, drivers that need to step it up a little bit. And I think I mentioned Dean Thompson, somebody that had a little bit of success in the West Series. It hasn't had so much in trucks. This was easily going to be a career race for him. He was up there running in the top 5 for much of the race, and then kind of got shuffled back a little bit, but was working his way back up to the front, and then unfortunately just got absolutely T-boned twice. And, I guess that there's that safety theme coming back again. I know that an accident like that can happen at any track, but I guess it's still fresh in the minds of fans. Like the All-Star race that we got here last year, and then the fall race with all the different tire issues. I think for whatever reason, there's a safety concern in the minds of a lot of people every time we come to this track, whether it's tire issues or whatever the case may be. So unfortunate that an incident like that happened on the front stretch of this track in the Truck Series, and hopefully we won't see something like that in Cup when they come here later this fall. But I think obviously, like I mentioned, an accident like that can happen anywhere. It's unfortunate that it happened at Texas, and it's unfortunate that we got the overtime crash that we got as well. And I think, again, that's not a Texas Motor Speedway issue by any means. That's an overtime issue, and that's a discussion that we've had on this show several times as well. But just an unfortunate deal all around. I hate it for Dean Thompson. Hope he's doing well, and hope that he can take the positive momentum that he had from how well he was running before the accident and try to convert that into a solid finish or two or multiple later this year, because he's certainly needing of one, in the result sheet. Well, let's move on now to the modifieds. I know we don't talk about the modifieds as much on this show as we possibly could, but certainly want to give them some love here when they're a companion race with the Xfinity Cup Series. I want to give a special shout out, of course, to the winner, Austin Beers, picking up his first career win. J.B. Fortin took home second place, Max McLaughlin third, Justin Bonsinger fourth. Those two got into a little bit of post-race discussion in the pits that was kind of interesting there. Patrick Emmerling, who was also in the Xfinity race, finished in fifth. How about NASCAR Hall of Famer Bobby Labonte showing that he still got it in sixth place? Ron Stoke in seventh, and then you can look at some of the other more notables as we go down the results list here. John McKennedy in ninth, Kyle Bonsignor 11th, Doug Coby 13th, and we'll take you through the second page of the results sheet here as well. But Brandon, certainly great to see Bobby Labonte back in NASCAR competing and still running well.
Yeah, and you wouldn't know it with how much I neglect to watch it during the season. But, man, I love that car, and I love that series. And I'm really glad Bobby Labonte is a part of it. And a shame that Ryan Newman had the conflict there and couldn't be a part of that. That would have been a great show to have them both in there.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Hopefully, Ryan, I know he tries to do a few of these races every year. Hopefully we see him in New Hampshire or something like that. Certainly a bummer that he couldn't be a part of that race as well. I don't know what schedule conflict he had. I know he's not racing full-time in Cup or any of the other series anymore. It's not like he had to get to Texas for a truck race or anything like that. But, whatever it was, unfortunate that he couldn't be a part of it after it got rained out and postponed to Saturday. But hopefully we get to see him at some point later this year. And of course, anytime we can fit it into our show or it's a companion day, we got some bigger names. The series will try to do our best to give the modified series some love and talk about the Whelen Modified Tour here on this show throughout the year. Let's move on now to the Xfinity Series. Brandon, a weekend of first-time winners here. Chandler Smith won the Xfinity race. He also impressed in his Cup debut, finishing in 17th. So let's just throw it out there. He's taking over the 16 car for AJ Allmendinger, who's back in the Cup Series full-time now. So when we think about that Xfinity program, is he now the flagship number one driver for the colleague racing team in the Xfinity Series?
Well, Ben, remind me of the other team members in colleague and Xfinity just for a moment, because
you got Daniel Hemrick, and then you've got the rotating 10 car.
Yeah, I don't think he has much competition. So, I mean, yeah, he's definitely Xfinity number one for colleague. And Chris Rice, I think, gave the invocation for that race. So it was kind of like a beginning to end for Chris Rice to have that win for colleague. And Chandler Smith, man, I keep missing these live. I keep missing these first-time winners, Carson Hocevar and Chandler Smith. Both missed them both live. I hate that, but two guys have been pulling for forever. Their win is coming. Just when is it going to happen? Chandler Smith able to get his first win here in Xfinity, and Carson Hocevar first in trucks. And Chandler Smith, I think this kind of track, and there's another one we're going to talk about here in the future here in a bit. But Chandler Smith, short track guy from the late model world. This place, Richmond, really tailors to his wheelhouse. So glad to see him dominate there and get the win for colleague racing. And yeah, he's definitely driver number one for colleague so far. Daniel Hemrick will need to do some big improvements there, and of course that third car, just a Kyle Busch here and there, and just keeping it afloat.
Yeah, well, I saw a stat that I think that the colleague number 10 is the only car that's finished in the top 10 in every race this year. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I would hope it's finished in the top 10 every race this year. We've had nothing but Cup drivers in it so far. We'll get into the first non-Cup driver that stepped into that car this year here in a second. But yeah, of course, Daniel Hemrick as well. It's kind of hard to believe he still only has that one win. Of course, coming in the championship race when he won the championship for Joe Gibbs. But certainly want to see him step it up a little bit and, try to get another couple of wins here for sure. I think the team is certainly more than capable of it. And, Daniel's an Xfinity Series champion, so ideally he would be capable of it as well. But just haven't been able to put the finishes together in the same way that colleagues' other cars have been able to over the last couple of years. And that 11 car, which really, I mean, you want to talk about the flagship team for colleague, that's where it all began, was in that 11 car for that program. So Daniel's certainly, doing his best to carry on that flagship team's legacy. But, it's been a while since that car's been in victory lane. So hopefully they can get that turned around. In the meantime, great run for the 10 car again this weekend, despite not having a Cup driver in it for once. Derek Kraus making his Xfinity Series debut. Does his top 10 on debut prove that he deserves a full-time ride somewhere, whether it be in trucks or Xfinity?
I mean, possibly. That's a great start there for that young man, and hopefully he can get something out of that. Did a lot with Bill McAnally, and I think, Ben, you know a lot more about Derek Kraus than I do, so I'm going to leave you with that one.
Yeah, well, of course, Kraus was a West Series champion with Bill McAnally and kind of helped build their Truck Series program up. I think it's a shame that he hasn't been able to land a full-time ride for this year. Of course, he did a truck race, Daytona, with Young's Motorsports, but I think certainly, this proves that he certainly has the talent. I know he got criticized a little bit last year for maybe tearing up a little bit more equipment than is ideal, but speed-wise, he certainly has the pace to be able to run up front. If this is what he can do in his series debut here, and I believe he was running well, and I'm trying to think back to his truck debut. I don't know if he finished 8th. I think he was running somewhere up close to the top 10 in his truck debut Phoenix in 2018 as well. So Derek has a history of jumping into a car of the next level and being able to perform right away. I would certainly like to see him get another opportunity later this year. Whether that's a full-time deal, I would certainly think he's capable of that, but we'll just have to wait and see what the future holds for him, I suppose. Well, let's talk about a driver that you've been high on over the last couple of years, Brandon. Josh Berry, finally getting a solid result in his Cup Series ride that he's currently, filling in for with Chase Elliott being sidelined. What do you think the future holds for him following this P2 result in the Cup Series for Josh Berry here?
Well, I'd like to note not only P2 and Cup, but he also got P3 for his regular Xfinity ride. That, and again, this is the other guy I was referring to, the one that short tracks really are his thing, coming from the late model world, and that's some big numbers for him, and also to be filling in for Chase Elliott, top equipment, show the Cup Garage what you can do. There's got to be something out there when this is all said and done that's waiting for Josh Berry on the other side. I hope he has a very successful Xfinity season this year. Hopefully he can snag him a championship. Maybe that would definitely propel him to something in the Cup Series if he's wanting it. But then again, he comes from the grassroots world, really, where I don't know if he would really enjoy being in the Cup Series. That may be a topic for another day. I don't know if he would even enjoy being at the top level. He might be like a Justin Allgaier that really enjoys being an Xfinity regular and being around those cars for the rest of his career. That may be up in the air for Josh Berry. But Hendersonville guy, I think he's just 32 or so. So I mean, he's got a lot of career left. It'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Well, let me throw that question back to you, Brandon. It's funny you bring that up. Matthew Bro and I were talking about this yesterday on the wrap-up show. If you were in Josh Berry's shoes here, and let's say Spire Motorsports has an opening, and they want you to drive their Cup Series car full-time in 2024, but you got to give up your Junior Motorsports Xfinity ride to do it. Is that a deal that you take, or are you content to race on Saturdays for a championship for Dale Earnhardt Jr., who's given you so much over the last couple of years, in particular with this Xfinity program?
Yeah, if it's Spire, I'm sorry, but that's probably going to be a nosedive on your career. And even if you're in Cup, it doesn't really matter too much if you can't perform with top level equipment. And Spire may get there one day, but they're not there right now. And so, no, that would not. If I was in Josh Berry's shoes, I would not do that. I would not step on Dale Jr.'s toes, who gave you this big opportunity and believed in you, gave you those few starts, and now here you are full time competing for championships in the Xfinity Series. I don't think that would be a good idea at all. But if he got some sort of deal with one of the more secondary teams, or if a colleague door opened up or something like that, that might be something to consider. But yeah, I don't know about Spire.
Yeah, and certainly I don't know about Hendrick full-time either. Obviously, he's doing an admirable job filling in for Chase Elliott while he's still recovering from his injuries. But, I think most of their drivers, or if not all of their drivers, are locked down for good multiple years at this point. So there's probably not going to be an opening there for a while unless somebody, gets a contract buyout or leaves early to take another opportunity for whatever reason. So I think, that's probably not an option. The Junior Motorsports to Xfinity, or Junior Motorsports in Xfinity to Hendrick and Cup path, probably not an option for Josh Berry in the immediate future. So it would probably have to come with a team like Colleague, like you were mentioning. Certainly if it's Spire, again, no disrespect to them, but that program, is just not of the same level, as a Hendrick or even a Colleague in my eyes.
Not yet.
At this point in the team's history. So, I don't know, but that would be something that Josh Berry wants. I can certainly tell you, I would much rather be fighting for an Xfinity championship in the situation that I'm in now, as opposed to taking that step to be able to say I'm racing the Cup Series and made it from grassroots late models to racing on Sundays in the Cup Series, but doing it in a car that on most weekends is probably going to get you 25th at best. So there's a trade-off there to consider. I know Josh certainly has a bright future. I know he's been racing for a while, and he's not as young as your typical, rookie or second or third year driver in the Xfinity Series might be, but he's certainly earned, a good solid future wherever that may be in this sport. I would hope that he's got a home set at Junior Motorsports for a while now. And I don't know that he would be willing to leave that behind to go to a Cup Series program, especially if it's for a smaller team like Spire that might not be able to give him that same level of equipment or results.
Yeah, save this thought for the time vault, though. I would really like it if Trackhouse somehow got a third car going with a lot of success. That would be an avenue I'd take. Trackhouse is quickly becoming a premier team to be a part of.
All right. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for joining us once again. I want to close out the show here real quick with our one shining moments. I think you might have multiple to give us this weekend. We certainly have a lot to choose from. What are your one shining moments from this past race weekend?
Yeah, we're gonna have to go ahead and narrow it down. We've gone pretty long on this episode, but Hocevar, Chandler Smith, Josh Berry, and a great IndyCar weekend. I'm sorry, I couldn't pick one, and I don't think you could either. They are all my one shining moments. It was all fantastic.
Well, I want to give a call to the young American Jack Crawford in Formula 2. I know it hasn't been the start to the season that he was hoping to have, struggling to finish in the points, but he ended up getting a podium in the sprint race, and being able to salvage that from the weekend, I think was good because he got taken out later in the feature race. But, good morale boost for him. I would hope moving on as the Formula 2 season continues, and certainly hope the best for him as he's trying to move up the ranks in his young career. So good to see him standing on the podium in the sprint race this weekend. And of course, Brandon, I'll totally agree with you. Everything else that you mentioned, we certainly had a lot to choose from this weekend, and it was great to see. Certainly a more heavy show in terms of the number of series that we had to cover, not just here on Encore, but on Wrap Up as well. So I know we went a little bit over an hour tonight, but sometimes with as much as we had to cover, that shouldn't come too much as a surprise, I suppose. All right, well, that's going to do it for another episode of Grid Live Encore. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn, and most importantly, right here on YouTube. Help us reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers before the Indianapolis 500 later this May. If you really liked what you saw tonight, take 5 minutes to invest in our Patreon. Join Colin, Deschelle, Mark, Robin, and David in helping keep us on the air throughout 2023 and beyond. Our long-term goal of $500 a month will help us begin attending races on site on a more regular basis, expanding our coverage for you, the viewers. And again, thank you so much to all who have already chosen to make a monthly pledge. If you'd rather make a one-time donation, you can select the Buy Me a Coffee option. There's a link to that as well in the description box below. You can buy coffee for your favorite honor or talent. Any amount will help us continue to grow our motorsports media outlet. Now on Wednesday, Kobe Lambeth and Josh Birch will bring you Grid Tonight with Matt White. Joe Samiega will be back with the Women in Motorsports program on Friday with Daniel Zeri, as always. And of course, you can stay tuned for more Grid Live coverage this weekend. Exact show schedule to be determined because, again, not as much going on. We'll see how we plan things this upcoming Easter weekend. But of course, in terms of a series we regularly cover, the Truck Series will be active on the dirt track at Bristol. Brandon, any final thoughts before we sign off this evening?
Well, we don't get a European Open Wheel weekend till Baku in late April, so it's Dirt Bristol, baby. Here we go. Hope we can get the windshields clean.
I hope they can prep the track well, because I think the
Yes.
racing has kind of been given a mixed reaction the first couple of years into this experiment. But as long as we don't have the buildup on the windshields, hopefully we can put on a good show for the fans, not just in the Truck Series, but for the Cup cars as well.
Hey, the important thing is it's still an experiment. And
That
it's
is
not
true.
we're done. So
All right. Well, for Brandon Crossland and Joshua Birch, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you for watching us right here on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe and check out some of our other videos, including Life on the Grid, where we interview folks from the motorsports industry. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.